What worries me is the fact that there is no real strategic plan for the day after. Our common goal is the total destruction of Hamas. Hamas shouldn't rule Gaza in no way. Hamas is taking over. The humanitarian aid that is coming into Gaza is because we didn't work in order to have somebody else getting those trucks and spreading the humanitarian aid to the people.
You have been quite critical, of course, of the Netanyahu government. You are the head of the opposition. So you've been pushing Netanyahu to make a deal much, much sooner than this. Just first, your reaction to the images that we're all watching, these emotional images, starting with the hostages coming out, and then we'll break it out piece by piece.
Listen, like every other Israeli, no matter what your views are, I was very emotional about this. I had tears in my eyes. I spent, in the last year and 4 months, there were very few days in which I didn't meet with families of hostages. And last week I was in Paris meeting with the Qataris, with hostage families. And discussing this, and this was the first time I realized it is going to happen this time around. And still the tension before this, just waiting for this to happen, waiting for this glued to the television. The entire nation was in the same spirit. And in ways, we have to be able to understand the complexity. I mean, the people who supported the deal, like I do, also understands the risks. And the people who said the deal is too dangerous were also, I hope, happy and joyful and in tears seeing the hostages coming back home. I mean, this has united us in ways that hasn't been around for too long.
Yeah, I'll say. We did a YouTube exclusive for the Rosenberg Report in which I needed to walk through evangelicals why I hate this deal, but why I support it.
Yeah.
You can do both at the same time. Now, you were pushing Netanyahu to accept basically the terms that President Biden laid out last May. Did you think, I mean, and you and many Israelis seem to be making the argument that he might not get to the point of being able to make a deal. What was your actual position? How do you see the decision Netanyahu's made, given that it's already cost him 6 members of his coalition, and actually there's a good percentage of his own party and coalition supporters, voters who are not comfortable with this deal and are actually against it?
Well, this is why you need leadership to make the decisions. You know, it's interesting. Leadership is almost never opposite your enemies. It's always opposite your own people, telling them the things they don't want to hear. I think the fact that this was postponed, you have to understand, the deal that was executed last night for the first time, or started last night, is not similar to the deal we had in May. It is the exact same deal, to the last point. And therefore, I think it was a mistake to postpone it. We have 122 soldiers who were killed in Gaza since May. We have at least 6 hostages that we know of that died during this time. And I don't think we have a lot to show for it.
Well, hold on. I mean, all right. So if you and Bibi were here on the set,
would say, but we killed
Yair Sinwar, Ismail Haniyeh, Mohammed Def.
These are very Mohammed Def was killed before. Sinwar was killed afterwards. Nasrallah, it has nothing to do with this. Haniyeh was in Tehran.
Invasion of Rafah, taking out 80% of the. I just want the tension of that case, which was that Netanyahu's case. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying his position was this is effectively surrender in May of last year, June of last year, whereas we've got so much more we've got to accomplish before we could make a deal like that.
Well, I'm not sure this is what he was saying in May. I think a lot of good. The IDF has done wonderfully and amazing things in the last few months. Still, listen, this is the what if kind of discussions. The fact that Sinwar was killed was a successful chance. It didn't happen because somebody planned it. He was just in a building and somebody bombed the building and he died. Every Israeli in his right mind, every person who believes in freedom and is in his right mind was happy about this. The guy is an archive terrorist and We should not shed no tears on his death and the people around, and the fact that people around him has died. The thing is, in our culture, and we have the same culture, this is the Judeo-Christian culture, we cherish life first and foremost. And the loss of life for having the exact same deal, to me, is something at least to be questioned. And I'm being polite about this. On the other hand, I don't want to be the guy who says, but. I thought it was the right decision. It was the right decision. I think it is the right deal. Like you, I felt the risks are there. The complexity is there. The things we have to be careful about are still around.
What are you most worried about?
The fact, and here's one thing I differ from this government. The fact that right now, okay, so we have the first stage, we have to go to the second stage until the last of the hostages are home. And what worries me is the fact that there is no real strategic plan for the day after. I mean, our common goal is the total destruction of Hamas. Hamas shouldn't rule Gaza in no way, militarily or domestically. This will not happen unless you will have an alternative governing body in Gaza. And the alternative governing body will be formed, because there's no other choice, from hopefully the Saudis as part of a bigger deal. We will probably discuss this later.
We should.
And the Emirates and the Egyptians, who are critical players for this, and a symbolic branch of the Palestinian Authority. And this symbolic branch, which is for all practical purposes insignificant, is the reason this government is not saying, yes, this is what we want. And because, it might be a PR disaster, but it is still the right thing to do. And this is what we need, an alternative governing body in Gaza to replace Hamas.
Okay.
The reason, I'll just finish one thing. The reason, for example, Hamas is taking over the humanitarian aid that is coming into Gaza is because we didn't work in order to have somebody else getting those trucks and spreading the humanitarian aid to the people.
Let's talk for a moment about the Trump effect. The whole game has changed since his election. He was almost acting as effectively as the President of the United States in the final weeks before his inauguration. Do you think a deal would have gotten done if Trump hadn't intervened to both threats against Hamas, but perhaps even encouragement of Netanyahu to take some risks that he might not have wanted to take, with the argument that Trump is saying, I'll be with you. If Hamas breaks this deal, I'll fully support you, in a way that we haven't heard that language. We didn't hear it from Biden and his team.
Well, first of all, we have to say we are thankful for the Biden administration for the help, but I don't think it would have happened without President Trump. I think, and the proof of the cooking is in the pudding. I mean, he's coming to office the same day he's coming to office, or the day before coming to office, the hostages are coming back, and this was because of the reluctance, the way he was pushing for this to happen. And showing once again what a great friend he is for the people of Israel. I was sitting not far from here when the embassy was opening here in Jerusalem with tears in my eyes, and I'm not crying that easily usually, and because I feel that he didn't get enough credit for the great things he did with the Abraham Accords. This is Nobel Peace Prize material. This, if not that, what?
And you became the first foreign minister and then prime minister, working closely with Naftali Bennett to really help lead this Israeli society and government during the early years of the Abraham Accords.
I had the privilege of opening the embassy in the Emirates, opening the embassy in Bahrain. Then we formed the Negev Forum, which was crucial. With the Bahraini, the Emirates, the Egyptians, and the Moroccans. Nasser Bourita was there.
Yeah.
So this has changed our world in ways that were unheard of, or nobody was even capable of thinking of before.
And these relationships have held despite this
and they're held
war.
During tough times. I mean, what was happening in Gaza, this was on television in the Emirates and in Bahrain and in Morocco, and still the relationship held on. And the reason is because the fundamentals are strong. And the fundamentals are strong because there is an American umbrella or an American floor to this, which was created by President Trump and his crew with Jared Kushner and others. And now we're looking forward to see how can we develop even more. You've mentioned the Saudi deal.
Do you think that's possible in the
Yes.
next year or so?
Yes, I think.
Why?
Well, here's the thing. It's an interesting. It doesn't usually happen that you have one concept or one organizing idea that solves or at least addresses the majority of problems we have. Because a Saudi, it is known as the normalization deal, but this is the creation of a regional coalition that, and most important, looking at Iran and saying, here's what, the siege is not on us, the siege is on you. Mm-hmm. As we saw during the missile attacks on Israel. And
meaning being the Saudis, the Bahrainis, the Emiratis, the Jordanians,
yes.
the Americans, some of NATO work together to shoot those missiles
to
down.
make sure we don't have
dramatic. It
is dramatic and historic, and we have to make sure that Iran doesn't get nuclear weapons, and this includes the necessary military threat in order to make sure the Iranians understand this is the worst idea ever. They will be attacked by this coalition if they will try to have a nuclear weapon. And this will strangle this regime that is killing its own people and disrupting the entire region. And this coalition is also the governing body we need for Gaza. And this coalition will be at least the beginning of the rebuilding of Syria. So you have one concept that serves all purposes, that has to do with Israel national security, and on top of this, brings to the table unbelievable options to the economy, both of the United States and Israel. Yeah. So this is breathtaking.
So related to that, couple thoughts. One,
and this is just to finish this thought. This is actually President Trump's vision. He brought that to the table. Yeah.
It looked like we were really close, like that President Biden and his team were closing in on a final deal. Mm-hmm. And then the Iranian regime decided to, in my view, it was their move to blow up a Israeli-Saudi-American mm-hmm. alliance by setting into motion, activating Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis.
Yeah.
So as we get closer, if we start to move closer to a deal in 2025, isn't there the risk that the Iranian regime is going to find a new way to blow this thing up, literally and figuratively?
They're going to do whatever there is in their power, but they have less power. And we are very much aware, and we have to take this into consideration. Now, the problem we have is actually different now, because the Iranian influence we can manage together. The problem we have, and this is the reason I do not believe that the current Israeli government is capable of doing this deal, is the Saudis, the Emirates, of course the Moroccans and the Egyptians needs needs a more solid Palestinian element into this. And this government...
They want a roadmap to a Palestinian state.
They want a roadmap to something. They want to say, listen, myself, like I think you and the majority of Israelis, looks at the situation and say, okay, we're not going to have a Palestinian state in the next 10 years. But we have to be able to at least have a vision of the possibility of separating from the Palestinians in a peaceful way one day.
Yeah, I don't support a sovereign state. I do support some sort of demilitarized entity. Yes. You were saying why you think, while Netanyahu's gotten us this far in terms of the war and now the beginnings of the hostages coming out, we're all praying and mm-hmm. holding our breath that would really finally happen. But you're saying they're not the government that can make the macro deal, the deal of the millennia, maybe, mm-hmm. To bring about a Saudi normalization. Why?
Two reasons. One is because they don't know how, with this what they have in their coalition, the members they have in the coalition, they cannot bring the necessary, very minimal Palestinian element or component of this deal. And the other is this government will...
Meaning Netanyahu has a very hard time politically saying, yes, I would support some sort of state, even though Trump in his plan that Bibi enthusiastically supported in 2020, there was a demilitarized Palestinian state there.
I agree, and I supported it from the opposition at the time, working with the Trump team. Still,
but the world has changed. I mean,
the
now
world
there's
has
less
changed.
interest
Netanyahu has changed, and the government has been. The Israeli government now is formed from parties that are, and even in Likud, it's not the same. It's not the same government, so they cannot do this. And the other problem is, you will have to do a lot of work in the United States from both sides of the aisle. You will want the conservative Democrats to, and there are still conservative Democrats to support this. Yeah. No, because this has to do with some sort of a defense agreement between the Saudis and the Americans. So in order to do this, you will have to have an Israeli government that is capable of working on both sides of the aisle. Right now, the current Israeli government, and it's a mistake, has leaned itself towards the Republicans, which is a great thing during a Republican administration, where you have the White House, the Senate and Congress as ruled by Republicans, but you're going to need the 67, 68 votes. You're going to need people who know how to work with Democrats as well. I know how to do it, not very to work with both sides. We will have to be able to be smart about how we're working with AIPAC about this, and I know you were going towards this direction with our evangelical, very, very dear friends.
Yes. All right. So, well, I think evangelicals will support an expansion of the Abraham Accords, especially with Saudi. They're going to be uncomfortable if it feels like Palestinian societies have been rewarded with a state after all this. But what is your message to evangelicals?
For the next 10 years, we have no worries about it. This is not.
There is not going to be a state like that.
Actually, what we're going to need is to have the normalization deal with the Saudis, and there is a healing process that is not going to be either short or easy within the Israeli society, and this healing process is also necessary before even starting to think about what kind of vision we have for the far future.
You'll definitely see evangelicals want to support more humanitarian relief and reconstruction in Gaza. I mean, there'll be a compassion factor of love your neighbor, even love your enemy, though that's always difficult. But if it feels like Israel being pushed,
we never bought into.
Well, yes,
as Jews, we never bought into the other.
That was a Yeshua edition, and which is a good one, but it's a difficult one. But yeah. Maybe last thing, message generally to evangelicals. You and I have built a relationship over the last, 5, 6, 7 years. It's so much has happened, and you've had so many different roles since then. But one thing we've talked about over the years, and I'm trying to encourage more now, is the creation by a prime minister or a foreign minister of an ambassadorship to the Christian world. 2.4 billion Christians, 600 million evangelicals, and yet no one person in any Israeli government of either side is sort of tasked with how do we work with Christians to encourage that pro-Israel sentiment. Thoughts on that?
I agree on the premise, which is these are our best friends in the world. This is the friendship we should cherish and promote constantly, and therefore you're right. I told you this before. I think we need 2 new ambassadors that are not in the regular curriculum. One is for big high-tech companies, big tech companies, because Google and Meta are more influential now than 90% of the countries in the world. Yeah. I mean, Elon Musk is a very fine example of somebody who, through tech, is changing the world in ways most countries will never do. And of course, we need an ambassador to the Christian world because it's the joint culture, and this culture needs protection and needs cooperation. Yeah. And even the one thing you have said about the ability to sympathize with the pain of others, which is part of the Judeo-Christian culture and not necessarily part of some of the cultures that are surrounding us. Sure. I mean, Israelis felt, and as I'm sure evangelicals felt, that when you see children that are dying, then you say, okay, we don't care where they are. Children are not supposed to die in grown-ups' wars. And this is something we're compassionate about, and this is something we have to work together. So yes, I completely agree that we need this tool as a special ambassador to promote this relationship.